Hello and welcome to On Psilocybin with Eric Osborne, brought to you by Psilocybin Says, where every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern we talk about life and self-development through the lens of psilocybin. I'm your co-host Tristan Harris, and I couldn't be happier to have you with us this evening. A reminder to you that every Monday morning, Courtney and Eric release a new podcast that is available through Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. This morning, we released our 52nd episode interviewing Laura Lee Benstock, chief editor at Trauma Survivor Thriver magazine. You can also watch the interview on our Psilocybin Says YouTube channel. Check out our Psilocybin Says One People Under the Mushroom shop, where you can rep mushroom gear such as t-shirts, coffee mugs, stickers, and other accessories. And check out the website at www.psilocybinsays.com and sign up for the newsletter to be notified when we release new content, live events, and products, as well as discount codes.
Right on, right on, right on. Thank you, sir, Tristan. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of On Psilocybin. I think maybe, Tristan, do you think that we should actually have this on psilocybin while actually on psilocybin?
There you go.
Everybody, it is the most wonderful time of the year in Kentucky. It is the season for Ovoideo cystidiata. Allegedly.
Allegedly.
No, 100%. You got to know your mushrooms. If you're picking mushrooms in the wild to eat, I don't give a shit if it's an oyster mushroom, if it's a chicken of the woods, if it is a ovoid or a cubensis, you better know what you're picking. There are so many mushrooms out there that have deadly lookalikes. This mushroom, this Ovoideo cystidiata, I have absolutely seen deadly gallerinas growing right beside them. Both of them are little brown mushrooms. Both of them grow in the same environment, same time of year. One of them will kill your ego. One of them will kill your entirety. So it is so crucial. I cannot overstate how important it is. There are so many mushroom poisonings in a given year because people get too eager about eating mushrooms that they found, whether it's for food or for psychedelics. And as this becomes more popular, that is going to be a bigger and bigger issue if we're not safe. And if we're endangering public safety, public health, then that is really what's going to bring the authorities in. So I am not condoning any illegal activity, but if you of your own volition choose to consume wild mushrooms, not limited to, but including actives, know what you're picking. Spore print is sometimes the only way that you can get a good identification. Have you ever had any instances, Tristan, where you thought you had found an edible mushroom and found out that it was poisonous?
No, I've had more of the like, oh, I'm gonna pick this, pick it, kind of look at it, and then be like, I'm kind of unsure, so I think I
Mm-hmm.
may just leave this here because, like you said, spore prints, being able to actually identify what spores are being released is almost like a really good way of doing harm reduction in that space. Also, for even gourmets, if you catch them at the right time. Um, but yeah, no, I've just left them laying because I'm like, I don't think that's what this is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. When in doubt, throw it out is what they say for good reason. Um, so yeah, I've even the Caesar's amanita. Are you familiar with that complex of mushrooms? So there's an amanita complex, the Caesar's amanita and Amanita caesarea. Uh, I forget what the one here is, um, but they are a choice edible that is in the same family as many, many deadly mushrooms. And I found Caesar's amanitas for probably about 3 or 4 years before I ever really had the courage to try one. And when I finally did, I was like, damn, this is almost risking your life for. Just kidding. But they are excellent. They are excellent. I am glad that I waited. There are many, many amanitas that will absolutely kill you. So I would by far rather be cautious. Even my first oyster, I remember finding my first oyster mushroom, and I did a spore print. I was nervous eating that mushroom, you know. Um,
Oh, and
but
being overzealous. Like when
that's what I'm
you're
saying.
new to mycology, I mean,
Yeah.
you've seen me bring you back. I'm like, is this turkey tail? And you're like, no. And I even know inside that all I have to do is flip it over.
Mm-hmm.
But in the
Mm-hmm.
moment, whenever I'm just like so just looking for something, yeah, it gets the best of you
And
and
I
it can
think with
kill you.
psilocybin, with the actives, it's even greater risk because people get very excited. I spent years and years and years looking for active mushrooms, never found any. Um, and then when I finally did, even still, I was like, spore print. With the actives, particularly ovoids, they blew pretty readily. I'm looking for one that maybe has a good blue on it, but and it's going to be hard to see on the camera anyway. This is a premium specimen here. I don't know if you can see some of that little bluing on the stem. Um, so that's a pretty good giveaway. But even still, man, I literally have seen them growing right next to deadly gallerinas. And I just left those. Like I'm not even gonna pick the ones that are growing. Not that there's a real risk there, but some serious business. Once my son, God, you talk about freaking out. My son, when he was probably like 3 or 4 years old, I was out in the backyard and with him, and he had carried over a deadly Gallerina to me, and I back then I was your first kid. You're just gonna fuck them up, everybody. You're gonna fuck up your first kid, and I fucked up many times with my first kid. But I'm gonna publicly admit that I smacked his hand, and I was like, "No, don't touch that mushroom," because one or two of those little mushrooms could kill a 3-year-old easily, and there is no remedy. And so I smacked the mushroom out of his hand, and went on about our day, whatever. And maybe like 5 or 6 hours later, he started getting sick and he was throwing up and he had diarrhea. And I was like, holy shit, my son, like he must have eaten one of these mushrooms. I was freaking out. Um, and like I called poison control and they were like, what's wrong? Hello. I was like, oh, my son, my 3-year-old son, he's vomiting. I don't know if he got into some poison or what may have happened. Like he was perfectly fine, and then he started getting really sick. And they're like, "Well, did he get into anything that would make you think he was poisoned?" And I was like, "Well, like he picked up some poison mushrooms early today." And the poison lady was like, "Oh, this is so serious. Even the spores can kill a child." And I was like, and even though I knew that was complete and utter bullshit, I started kind of panicking. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to kill my son with my love of mushrooms. It ended up not being that. And I knew in my head, like, competent nerds, that the spores are not going to kill a kid. You can actually even please don't do this, but you can take a poisonous mushroom, put it in your mouth, roll it around, and spit it out, and it won't kill you, it won't poison you. You would have to chew it up and get it into your mucous membrane, into your bloodstream before you would actually get sick. But
That
don't try.
reminds me of like old chemists in labs who would like, almost like taste or not even really taste, but just smell all these chemicals to identify them in
Mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm.
lab. And then
Yeah.
like definitely not the healthiest way to go about
Speaking of,
identifying chemicals.
what's up tomorrow is 419 Bicycle Day, everybody. Woot, woot, ding, ding, ding. Albert Hoffman discovered LSD not on 419. He actually discovered LSD 25, or he actually ingested LSD 25 on, I think it was the 16th or the 17th. And it was a couple of days later that he took just a little bit 300 micrograms that sent him off into another fucking plane of existence where Einstein was chasing him around the living room with a butcher knife, where Thomas Edison was trying to kill him as well. After it was all said and done, Albert Hoffman said, I think I'd like to do that again. So thank you, Mr. Albert Hoffman, who also synthesized psilocybin from samples collected in Oaxaca from Maria Sabina through Gordon Wasson and Robert Heim. So a little bit of psychedelic history coming up on us, a reason to celebrate, a reason to microdose or macrodose or whatever you like to do. LSD is one of God's greatest gifts to the planet, I do believe.
Oh, and if there is something, I mean, knowing that it has to be derived and altered, even if it's from a natural source, but that it has to be, altered by man, that is definitely a gift from something existential.
Yeah,
in that way.
I read a Reddit feed the other day of someone who accidentally ingested something like 250 hits of LSD. It's amazing that you can take something like that that's so powerful, and not only is it non-toxic, but it will make you better. I've read multiple instances of people taking ungodly amounts of LSD accidentally. Like this one lady accidentally took something like 100 hits I read about, and she spent like 12 hours on the couch drooling and snotting all over herself, just completely incoherent. Eventually she came out of it, and I forget what it was, but she had some kind of behavioral dysfunction that was corrected after that experience. Yeah. Who we got out there? We got some folks listening in, watching in. Would love to hear from you. Tristan, can you share the link for people to hop in? I know that with LinkedIn, last time there were some issues, so I don't know if you need to go directly to LinkedIn and share that in the feed. But if you see the Restream link, all you got to do is click it and we'll let you in. You can bring any conversation to the table as long as it somehow involves psilocybin. That's what we're on tonight, y'all. We are on psilocybin. Literally. I think last week Tristan was. This week is my week. Unless you are as well.
Holding space for each other, maybe simultaneously.
Allegedly. All right, we got Greg here. Greg's Pentecost over in Hawaii. Aloha.
Aloha.
Hey there, teddy bear.
How you doing today?
Man, I'm doing quite good. It's been a very productive day, and good. I woke up this morning. I took some. If those of you who may check my social media, I had some harvested mycelium that I took out into the yard, and when I went to go spread it out into the mulch pile, I was greeted by a rather large and beautiful garter snake, which is always a good sign for me. How about you? What's going on down the beautiful island of Hawaii?
Well, I'm still recovering from not feeling well, so got up, made some phone calls for work, and grabbed some lunch, and then I'm like, ooh, look, Eric's live. Let's jump on and say hello.
We are on psilocybin. What kind of psilocybin conversation you got for us today, Greg?
Kind of an interesting one. It's when I'm in mushroom space, one of the ways that I kind of do like a reality check of where I'm at is I feel like my entire body, my fingers, my toes, everything vibrating. And as you know, last week I was sick. I was running a fever. And I mean, there's a lot to be said for fever visions. Okay. And I know it's not something that it's talked about in literature a whole lot, but if you look in the right places, you can see people who are like, absolutely, like when running a fever, there are visions, there's things that come from beyond for us. And it's staying with me, like that sensation of vibration. And I don't know if it's because I'm still like recovering from being sick,
Mm-hmm.
or if it is like, you know, like, wait a second, this is how I feel when I'm in the mushroom space, and here I am
Permanent.
feeling it. Yeah, here I am feeling it while I'm sick and running a fever, and now that I'm not running a fever anymore, I'm still feeling it, and I'm like, wait a second. So I kind of wanted to put that out there and kind of see what your thoughts are on that, and like if you've run across this type of thing, or if you have the same type of energy sensation when you're in the mushroom space. But I wanted to put that out there.
Well, that's a really interesting topic. Read multiple reports of people getting various fevers on the brink of death, coming back and having clairvoyance or different kinds of artistic gifts, and some real interesting phenomena there. I have no idea what's behind that. It's always been super interesting, not necessarily something that I personally want to experience. But I had I think you may know, as in some of the chats we were talking about before that last retreat, I got food poisoning, right? And I was laid out in bed hardcore. And there was a minute that I thought, well, I can't do anything else. And I've been wanting to take a mushroom trip. Maybe I should just take some mushrooms while I'm laid out in bed. And at some point, very shortly after that thought, it occurred to me, no, you can access that space right now. And I kind of consciously asked, okay, what do you have to teach me? And it was a very kind of blatant lesson around family and relationships. And it was very much like I was tripping in that space. But what is that? Who knows? I don't know. Is it just brain chemistry? Is it somehow the fever is lighting up areas of our brain? I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the mechanisms behind a lot of this stuff. It's more just
Right.
about the experience, In terms of the vibration during a mushroom trip.
Yeah, is that something that you've ever experienced?
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I generally think that what mushrooms do is increase our ability to uptake chi, or vital energy. And I think we talked a little bit about this last week. I don't have the book right here in front of me, but there were several strange and sometimes worrisome phenomena that would start happening during mushroom trips for me, and some of it would be repeated, and it was always this kind of different physiological stuff, or even some kind of metaphysical kind of out of body experiences that really, because they were repeating and they were so far removed from anything that I had ever known, I was kind of concerned about it. And I thought, am I taking too many mushrooms? Am I doing something wrong here? And so somehow I Googled some of the physiological stuff that was happening, and the only thing that I could find was this book by Mantak Chia, The Healing Light of the Tao, I think is what it's called. And in this book, he talks about, as you advance in Qigong practice and you take up greater and greater levels of Qi, then these things will start to happen. Things like your body vibrating, things like itching all over your body, things like your tongue doing kind of crazy, wild things like having out of body experiences or bilocation. And according to the Taoist, and you probably know this as much as I do, but from what I understand, all of that phenomena is centered around higher levels of vital energy that allow us to consciously move into these other kind of vessels of being, And that's how I kind of understand it. Like if we see it as like a liquid, and if we have various vessels, like we have this physical body that we all know and love, and then we have it's termed different things, but higher levels or higher kind of states of being. And as we uptake that energy, then it kind of flows over into these other vessels. I don't know if that makes any sense or if that resonates with you at all.
It it kind of reminds me of kind of what psilocybin, and psychoactives do, or for psychedelics do for us, and that is they inhibit our default mode,
Mm-hmm.
and and it's one of the things that I'm real clear on. A lot of our abilities, like if you and I haven't spoken a whole lot about my family history and the ability to um, use and access spiritual energy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like as a child, I remember seeing auras like
Mm-hmm.
all the time. It wasn't a occasional thing. It was
Mm-hmm.
that's the way people were.
Mm-hmm.
And I also know that other children that I've been around. Okay, we've had conversations like that. They're like, "Yeah, I could never lose that." People may not understand it. They may not do it, but I was bred out of seeing
Mm-hmm.
um, because of the world. The world that I lived in my family
Mm-hmm.
environment, and um, and so going back into that space and getting rid of some of those learned habits of not seeing auras, of
Mm-hmm.
being able to really be the true empath. Okay, being able to really access some of the stuff that is natural and inherent in most of us, or almost all of us, and definitely my family. If you look at who some of my family is, like, definitely have these capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it's interesting to sit there and be like, well, wait a second, is this another, kind of like what you're talking about? Is this another way of accessing something that has always been there?
Mm-hmm.
I brought this up with a friend of mine, an energy healer, the other day. And at one point, he kind of, we were having this conversation about sharing this, and he goes, in essence, what he said, he actually said these words at one point. I just kind of giggled. He goes, "Welcome to my world."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, you're dealing with this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've worked with energy pretty much my whole life, but I've never felt it through my physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And now being able to sense it through my physical body is a very different thing. So it makes sense that as we go and as we work further and as we build, more neural networks and more neural connections, we're able to access higher levels.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And one of the main measurable functions of a psychedelic is increased levels of openness, and that's usually classified in terms of ideological openness, or um, openness to new experiences.
Right.
But I think there's probably an openness that is even occurring on this physical, energetic level. I certainly know when when I get to a certain point and I use a certain level of focus and attention within the mushroom space, that I let down boundaries. And, I appreciate it being related back to brain function. That certainly plays a significant role, but it manifests throughout the entire system, you know, and that's, one of the things that we don't have any, that I know of, any studies around, is the how psilocybin and other serotoninogenic psychedelics interact within the serotonin receptors in the heart or in the gut, right? Everything's focused on the brain. And a lot of the not early, kind of the later stage stuff that I started experiencing that was really very strange was centered around my stomach. And I would feel, and I can still tap into this, um, sometimes without mushrooms, like a receiving of information through my stomach.
Hmm.
So, like, to explore all of that and what's behind that, what that means, I think is some really interesting ground.
one of the things that I would like to continue working on is not just, okay, so this is, I'm on the tail end of the sickness, but I'm not running a fever. I'm still feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I want to start working with is, and this might be for further conversation, that now that this is here, okay, instead of just having it be part of my experience so that I then go back to ignoring it again, how do I access it and use it for what it's there for?
So
and I don't know if you've got any books or any recommendations on where to go, but that's one of the things that I definitely want to start exploring.
Do you perceive it as energy moving into you or out of you or both ways? Is there a kind of a directional?
It's not directional yet. I haven't felt it directional, and I haven't tried to work with it in that way. Because I've really just been kind of going, okay, is this still here? And I'm like, yeah, it's still here. And just usually it's when I'm relaxing, getting ready to either go for meditation or go to sleep. And that's when I'm really focusing on it. So I haven't started working with the energy and inflow and outflow yet.
One of the first things that I started to do as I noticed my bubble, and maybe that's what this is. I don't know. I mean, that's how I understand it. When I feel my skin start to vibrate, I understand it as me becoming more aware of my EMF, my electromagnetic field, right? And one of the things that I first started to work with was, in group sessions, I usually would remove myself like 10 or 20 feet away from everybody while everything's coming on. And if I wasn't working with the mushroom myself, I would go into various forms of breath work and qigong. And even if I was working with mushrooms, I would often use those as well as kind of entry points, but it didn't require the same amount of attention and concentrated effort. It comes more naturally. But what I found very interesting, and still do, is after taking that separation away from everybody and kind of, getting into myself, at first I feel kind of cold and tingly, and then it starts to get maybe kind of itchy and warm, and it kind of expands out. And then there comes this point where it's like, okay, it's setting in, my whatever spidey senses are on or whatever. And then to go out and slowly start moving towards people. And I found, it varies depending on the kind of the energetic level of the individual that I'm moving in range of. But I started to find that within like 6 feet or so, that I would close my eyes. This is one of the reasons I loved doing mushroom services in the dark, is because people weren't aware of me as much, and I could be less focused on the physical being and just kind of move closer and closer in the dark and just kind of feel, just like I would just slowly move towards someone until I could feel our bubbles kind of intersecting. And it's I think it's this is kind of a tricky place here, I feel like, because we always have to respect the sovereignty of everyone. And I feel like, we should never attempt to influence anyone's experience. We should never attempt to kind of manipulate any situation, particularly in psychedelic space. We just have to just allow it to be what it is. And so what I would do in those instances is kind of go towards these individuals, find that space where I can kind of feel the bubbles start to intersect, and just put all my focus on just exuding love, and that, like, that tangible sense of our energy interconnecting, and being able to, like, really send that to people just as this form of support, like using my energy to help just support and love and nurture others. Always, that kind of what felt like the right thing to do. So I don't know, like, some people do the Reiki thing and they get in and work on people, and I've had people do that to me, and it's not that I have any kind of issue with that. Um, but particularly in the psychedelic space, and when these abilities kind of wake up in ourselves, it's a real responsibility that we have to respect, do no harm, and ultimately just support the people that we're with. So it'll be interesting to see how this develops for you, if this is something that becomes kind of a tangible working tool, you know?
I'm pretty sure, as long as it stays with, I'm pretty sure that it will. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
In years ago when I was young, there was spiritual space. I was accessing a lot more than I felt comfortable accessing. I asked for it to be turned off.
Mm-hmm.
Several years ago, I'm like, please turn it back on, but give me guides so that I can learn to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no doubt that this is, one more step in that of, okay, so, here, you've asked for guides so you can learn how to use things. So now we're turning things on bit by bit.
Mm-hmm.
But with now guides in place, so I can, as you said, there is a certain, whenever with great power comes great responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm very sure that that's what is happening, is I'm being given the guides so that I can learn to be responsible and be of service.
So how do you perceive of this kind of reality, or this other world where intelligence may be, or where these guides that you're talking about, how do you really contextualize that within your experience?
Um, when you talk about like spiritual guides, are you talking about mushroom
Yeah.
space?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it seems like there's crossover there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to spiritual guides, I've always had guide. Okay, and I'll call it God, and if you want to call it something else or whatever, that's fine. It's just the presence that has been the guide for me. And I grew up with the name God, and it's not associated necessarily with a particular religious God.
Mm-hmm.
It is that being that, when I listen, guides me.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talked about the mushroom space, and using those. That guide has always been with me. When through my troubled, my troubled teen youth, through my adulthood, ignoring it, saying, um, maybe you should go this direction. I'm going to do what I think is best, and let ego rule me for way too long, to being led to the mushroom space now. And one of the things about being in the mushroom space is that it's not that the guides are there necessarily different, but they're allowed to show me things, and I guess I'm more open to
Mm-hmm.
receiving what they have to share with me, because in order for me to hear them, I have to set aside ego.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes that might be really easy, and other times that might be really freaking difficult because I'm in it.
Mm-hmm.
But when I go, when I set aside the space and beingness to, 6-8 hours to be in the mushroom space and to work with my guides and allow them to guide me, it allows them to show me more than just simple words or, or share thoughts with me, because like I'm listening to A New Earth right now by Eckhart Tolle, and he's really clear. He's like, well, if you're using words, that's ego
Mm-hmm.
for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it can't be used for other, but oftentimes that's where it comes from. And so what it does, it allows my guides to really give me. It's like going from playing checkers to playing 3D chess. They can show me, instead of like tic-tac-toe, and you're going to want to try and get 3 in a row. It's like, okay, so now here's an experience on multi-dimensions where you can now, it's not just thinking about it, it's not just feeling it, but it's experiencing it and understanding the multiple levels of where that experience comes from. It's not just a, what can I think about? Okay? It's, this affects you, and it not only affects you in this one way, like, when we think about logic and we think about the typical ego type things of domination and financial control and being right versus being wrong. When we look at it, when I have an opportunity to go there, it's like, okay, so here's how your beingness in one space, okay, affects, everything around you. To put it in kind of a weird thing, it's like walking across your grass and either destroying the mycelium under your feet, okay, or walking across your grass and having the entire, all the plants, all the animals, all the critters, and all the mycelium and everything growing and flourishing because of your beingness. And it's like we actually have that depth. When I'm in mushroom space, I can see that effect that I have in the world, much more so than I can think it. And it's a different thing. Somebody said that being in mushroom space, it allows you to feel that which you know. Okay, and I really feel that that's where the guides allow me to do when I go into that space and I'm with them and they show me something. I might be able to comprehend something and think about it, okay, but that doesn't help me integrate it into my everything. Okay, but when I see it in this like 3D chess thing, okay, and I'm seeing.
We lost you, Greg. I don't know if you can hear me, but you locked up on us. You still there, Tristan? Oh. Okay. Just making sure it went on my end.
Yeah, maybe Greg will catch back up.
Yeah, that was getting damn interesting.
Move him out for a second. Let me
see if I can bounce him out and bounce him back in. All right. Well, that is technology. That's where we're at. Hopefully he'll come back into the thing here. I wanted to ask him when he started to really allow and open up to this information. This is something that for me is still very much coming to terms with. It's something that I'm still very much, I have a bit of a struggle with it, I must say. I was raised in such a concrete, absolute world. This is, a Newtonian mechanical universe, and it is not just that.
Oh,
Yo, yeah. Kevin.
That's not fair. Where did Greg go? I'm on the edge of my seat. I want him to finish that, man.
No. Hopefully he'll hop back in.
Yeah, hopefully he'll hop back in. I want to touch on some. We're talking about his energy and all that. And ever since I left y'all in Kentucky, man, I've been really diving super deep into breathing. Because I remember when you first met me, we first retreat, it was how I was breathing. I couldn't control it, and it was doing something to me. I didn't know what it was. That was 3 years ago. So I was like, whatever. It was just mushrooms. So when I got home, man, I really dove into Wim Hof like deep.
Mm.
to the point to where now I'll go through a session until I'm completely terrified in a way. And I know I had the experiencing of the energy truly vibrating through your core. It happens every time I go deep.
Mm-hmm.
And it's calmed me down a lot to the point to where, and now I'm kind of preparing my body, my mind, and everything for my next mushroom trip, which I don't know when that will be. It hasn't called to me yet, but it's gotten to the point now to where I'll go so deep into that, I'll feel through my toes, feet, literally like it's going to explode.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go and then, of course, see that whatever it's usually like a mandala pattern in my vision for about an hour through that. And so what I'll do is I'll do that, and then I'll get up and go see my sister. And it's probably all in my head, but every time she's in a good mood, she's clear. When she's in a bad mood, she's fuzzy. I don't know what that is. So I'm still playing with it. And I'll go outside and I'll see people laughing, clear, arguing, fuzzy. I'm like, what is this? I don't know what it is. But
you know what it is. Come on, you know what it is.
But it's one of those things I don't know, because I really can't, I'm not educated that way, but I continue to do that. And my next trip, I don't expect anything from it, but I'm very interested in seeing what this time will do with just my body being clearer,
Mm-hmm.
healthier. My mind's just weird as ever. And I'm doing so many different things, but I'm not overdoing anything, if that makes any sense. I usually just take things to the max. Okay, I take that back. I was working out the other day and I was feeling myself, feeling really good, feeling really strong, kind of twinged my back a little bit and then backed up. Usually I would lose my shit and just be depressed, but it happened. And for a minute I was worried, but then I was like, you know what? I do need to slow down a little bit. And it made me laugh while my back was hurting. I was laughing like a madman. And yeah, you see to slow down a little bit. And that's when I had the internal talk. And this is all coming from, anybody wondering, it's all coming from my mushroom experiences. The internal dialogue, the mirroring, looking at yourself, really talking to yourself and understanding who you are every day. Not just when you feel like it, just every single day. And then part of this experience is I've been doing it for about a year now. My goal for me is every day I meet one person new, stranger, and I share something intimate for 10 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, and always comes back to talking about sanctuary, mushrooms, what they do, and all that stuff. And it's had a weird effect to where I see people clearer now. I don't see black. Of course, I don't see like this person's homeless or this person's that. I see that person is on whatever path they're on, and that's translated into so many things. The biggest one is it's helped me with this path I'm trying to lead, the path of love. And a lot of people roll their eyes when I say that. I'm very serious about it, because it's the one thing I've ever done in my life that just feels right. And for me, it's easy because I don't have to, like I said, with that, you have to, I love everyone I meet. Doesn't mean I have to like their opinion or have to agree with what they agree, but I love them for that path, man.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see people that way, thanks to the mushrooms, it just makes your life a lot easier. And
yeah.
But that comes back to the energy feeling that Greg was talking about. I get that every time now when I go deep, it's not every day. I can't do that shit every day. It's just, it's an experience. And man, the other day I did it, and I got so deep into that it made me jump up. Like I had this effect where it felt like my whole body was literally gonna explode. But when I got up, of course, it went back to baseline. I was like, "What the hell was that?" And so now with that in my head, it's like, just like mushrooms, we're going to see carefully where that's going to lead. I know, I have an idea, and I don't know, man. It's one of those things. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's hard to really say that to when I meet people they're beautiful. When I talk to people, it's funny. It's just one of those things. It's not like when people flip me off in traffic, I laugh. I don't know, man. It's just a good ride right now, and I'm sustaining it. And it's like we talked about this before. I'm not ignoring bad shit. I know it's there. I see it every day, man. But it's not gonna stick to me. That's my thing. Now, if it works, people are like, "Well, I can't do that." Well, I'm not telling you what you can do. I'm telling you what I'm doing. I mean, that's what people get. That's where people get mixed up. They think I'm trying to tell them what to do. I'm not telling anyone what to do. I'm just sharing what I experience in my day to day. And if that helps, great. If it doesn't, don't.
People's, whatever someone's thinking is their responsibility. If they think we're trying to force something on them, even if we are, that's their bag, baby, not ours. I'm going to bring Greg back in here.
Awesome.
See, you don't have to bounce, but let's see if we can get him back in. He's going to go on, I think, without the video and see if Greg, man, you left us on a cliffhanger there, buddy.
I apologize. My internet went completely out. So I sent you a message and I'm all like, technology is great until it isn't.
Yeah, I saw that come in. All right. So let's take us back where we were here. Kevin's bringing us up through his experience with energy and sight and kind of, I love that we're talking about this, but at the same time, it's like to a certain degree, talking about it is a bit of a disservice because, like you were saying, it's a little bit of ego mixed in there. But we're here with these egos in these bodies, exploring this other world. So I think you were talking about. Gosh, what were you just on right there at the end there, Greg? Do you remember where you were?
Yeah, where was I? Because I was talking about, trying to comprehend our world in a 3D, in like playing tic-tac-toe.
Yeah.
We can understand our world in a tic-tac-toe world, okay? And like, having a conversation with somebody the other day, and we were talking about God, and they're like, there is no God, da-da-da. And I'm like going, well, are you being so egotistical that you're claiming to understand the entirety of God? Okay. And you're saying that because the way you view things, the entirety of God, however you define it, okay, doesn't exist because this doesn't understand it. And I'm like, and it went on from there, and really their thing was against all their religious doctrine and religious teaching. And I won't fault them for that because I think a lot of us have some of that baggage. But when we look at the concept of what our mind can understand, it's like playing tic-tac-toe, and what I'm being shown when in the mushroom space, what my guides can give me, okay, is they can allow me to feel and interact in a 3D chess game, whereas normally this is just acting on a tic-tac-toe. And when I say that, Eric, you know me, I'm not a simpleton. I'm not, somebody who doesn't, isn't capable of advanced, complicated thought. But yet in comparison to what I'm being shown, all this can do, like at best, this thing can master tic-tac-toe. Yeah. And so that's really the difference between what my guides are showing me, is, whether we're going to share that in different worlds or different dimensions or whatever context somebody wants to put it in, it's way beyond my normal day-to-day experience in this physical body and working with my ego.
For sure.
Does that finish up kind of where I was before?
Yeah. Where, for me, the question that I wanted to ask you, and I feel like it's kind of at a place where I'm at right now, is, you had said that for a certain point you had kind of put aside all of that guides and spirit world and all that stuff, and it was more of an ego-based intellectual kind of experience. And then at a certain point you began to open back up, and I'm curious when and how that came to be.
So you and I have had conversations previously about 2 times. One I brought up today, where when I was young, I asked to not have access to that. And another time we had a conversation about, and it was, I think in the Discord chat, about how when I was first started entering the mushroom space, I was in resistance and I wanted it to overwhelm me with things. But once I opened up, all right, now that you're open to me, I can show you everything. So which one are you referring to now?
This second phase where now that you opened up, right? And so I guess the what really lies behind the question is, how did you kind of learn to let go and allow this information to come in more regularly and just accept that that what you were experiencing was true? Does it make sense what I'm saying? Because
it does, and for me, it hits on a lot of different levels. So let me start off with, how did I accept it, and then how do I know that it's true? Okay. So when I started entering the mushroom space, the amount of mushrooms that I would need to consume to have an experience was pretty massive. I mean, I'm not a small guy, okay, but to have to take 5 grams to be able to have kind of anything, I was definitely dealing with a lot of resistance to what was happening. A lot of resistance. And I'm like, overwhelm me. You're gonna, if you're gonna force me to do it. And I was making the mushrooms work. And finally one day I had taken enough, and it was well over 5 grams. And they're like, you can either fight me or you can let me in. Like, you can't, like, I guided you here, but you chose to be here. So what do you want to do? And like, it hit me. I'm like, oh, I'm forcing you to work. I'm forcing you to show me stuff. Since I've chosen to be here, why don't we allow you to do it? And I just opened myself up. And once I did that, I went from having to take a significant amount to have kind of any experience. And now, like, 1 gram takes me anywhere, and I go with what my guides will tell me. My guides will tell me today 2 or today whatever. Okay. But literally on 1 gram, sometimes half a gram. Okay. I'm on a journey being shown things. But it was that internal resistance that, it was the difference between, I'm going to take this and it's going to take me somewhere, kind of like, regardless of what I'm thinking or doing, it's going to take me somewhere. And I was trying to overanalyze and think about, okay, well, now we're going here and now we're doing this and now I feel this way. Well, that's just the ego. That's just the ego in control. Is it having the effect that I want it to have or that I think it should have? Versus closing my eyes, putting on some music, and letting it take me and go, okay, now let's go play with the dandelions and let's go play with the trees and let's let it take me. Let's let it do what it's here to do. Let's let it show me things. And I wish that I could portray that in a much simpler way so that people could see how they're having resistance to it. Tristan says, oh, I like this. Tristan just sent me a note. And he says, instead of simply allowing the river to flow, you had dams that the river had to reach to a level to surpass. Tristan, you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. It has to get to this point before I'll allow anything to happen. And that's the best way to do it, because that's where I was holding on. I was like, no, you're going to, like, if you're going to take me, you're going to do this to me.
You're going to drag me through it.
Yes. As
Which
opposed
is one of the
to,
benefits, right? That's one of the good things about the mushroom, is that for those of us who do have a hard time letting go, it can drag us to let go eventually.
And I think that's also an important lesson.
Yeah.
Okay. Because, what you do in one thing, what you do in one place, you do everywhere. And so it allowed me to go, okay, so if I'm if I'm forcing the mushroom to work to give me anything, okay, and now I can let go. Now I can just float downstream. Where else in my life am I doing that?
Yeah.
Okay. And once I started looking at that, like, okay, so I'm forcing this. Oh, that's why this is so hard. I'm forcing this. That's why this is so hard. I'm forcing this. And as I get present and start looking at these areas and just like, it is what it is. I may not like the way it goes, but I guarantee you in every area that I'm able to do that, it ends up being much better, okay, than if I had been forcing it. Forced it in the way I wanted it.
Wow, that's beautiful. I do want to take just a second to comment on Sasha here, saying that the Oregon psilocybin. Don't leave though. I got a couple more questions I want to ask you, Greg. Oregon Psilocybin Advisory Board meets in 10 minutes. They're wrapping up the public comment period this week. Please share your thoughts with the OPAB on how entheogenic practitioners should be allowed to practice in the state of Oregon. You all, this is a really, really important topic here. Oregon, most of you know through Measure 109, legalized psilocybin therapy in 2020. It's going to roll out, or is 2021. It's going to roll out in 2023 and become available. Only in the last 4 to 6 months has the religious access even been brought into the consideration, thanks to incredible attorney and advocate for the mushroom, John Dennis, who was on one of our Psilocybin Says episodes. Please go listen to that. But even more importantly, please go sign this petition to require Oregon to allow religious use, and not only to allow religious use, but to allow religious use without being subject to the same kind of scrutiny as therapeutic use. Like, there is a vast difference between therapeutic application of psilocybin, strictly therapeutic psychological application of psilocybin, and using psilocybin as a sacrament. Yes, sacramental use should be monitored. We should know that practitioners are have good intentions, are experienced and safe. But here's the deal. That's what they're saying in Oregon, is that if we just allow this religious use to come in without all the requirements of the therapeutic approach, that you'll have unsafe practitioners, it'll get out of hand, it'll just be too much. Oregon is not even requiring that a psilocybin facilitator in the therapeutic context ever has a psilocybin experience. Can you please explain to me how the concern for public safety is really what's at stake here, when we are going to allow $500,000 psilocybin treatment centers to be run by people who have no psilocybin experience? Sasha, am I against equal scrutiny? I am. How should we say this? First of all, the issue with the OHA wanting to prevent access to any psilocybin mushroom outside of cubensis based on indigenous association or lineage is ridiculous. Cubensis is not a native mushroom to Oregon, period. Amen. There were no North American tribes that were using psilocybin mushrooms, to our knowledge, despite cyanescens and azurescens being all over the place up north. There's some reported use of cubensis down by the Cherokee in southern U.S., from what I understand, but there is no lineage or traditional use in the United States associated with psilocybin cubensis. The primary mushrooms used in traditional contexts were Mexicana and Coriolescens and a few other species that don't even show up. And from what I understand, they're not being permitted within the scope of the OHA. It's not therapeutic use. It's psilocybin services. Yeah, I know that there's no diagnosis required. That's great. But a healthy, normal person if there is such a thing, gets a therapeutic benefit from psilocybin. So while, I don't want to get too much, and you're welcome to jump into this conversation here. There's a link there that you can hop in, Sasha. But like, religious use is a very different beast than going in for, whatever, if it's depression or if it's just a healthy normal that's going in for consciousness exploration and whatnot. The issue at hand here is, in my opinion, one of the main issues is equal access. You're going to have the cost of a psilocybin session in these highly regulated, state certified facilities is not going to be cheap. You're going to have what percentage of the population that's not going to be able to access psilocybin if there is a religious, spiritual use permitted that doesn't have the high bar to entry that allows more people to come in, then why are we doing this? So that those who already have access can just have access in fancier facilities. I don't think that the therapeutic organizations, or however it's termed there, what was the word you used, psilocybin services, I don't think that those should be held to the same requirements as a religious practice. Safety regulations can be passed without infringing upon religious freedom. I agree. Safety regulations can also be implemented without significantly increasing costs. I agree. I'm not arguing for just, kind of rampant access, unsafe access. Again, I go back to the reality that the OHA is maintaining, that you can be a lead facilitator in a multi-million-dollar psilocybin facility, or whatever the psilocybin services are, and not take psilocybin. There is no single greater risk to an individual's safety or outcome, in my opinion, after all these years of taking mushrooms and working with people in mushroom space, than having a facilitator that doesn't understand the space that you're in. And quite honestly, taking mushrooms 5 times or 10 times does not give you the requisite experience to assist someone through a high level or a high dose experience. This thing is so variable. There's so much. There's a reason why the shamans or the traditional cultures required apprentices to apprentice for 10 years before they could actually hold space for others. So, I'm very grateful that Oregon is moving this forward in some ways. We've got to have the conversation. It's got to start somewhere, but seems like there's some money interest in here that want to keep this in the hands of, I don't want to say therapists. If it's going to cost roughly $250,000 to get a facility up and ready to provide psilocybin services, that is not for everybody. That's not equal access. If it's going to cost $5,000 to $10,000 for a psilocybin session, along with whatever prep and integration goes with that, that is not equal access. There is plenty of ability for safe access at a very reasonable cost without having to put a bunch of hurdles in place that religions or practitioners have to jump through. Anyway, I would love, though, Sasha, if you wanted to get in this conversation to share your perspective. If not, that's fine too, but please go sign the petition, you all. No matter what, there should be a religious protection for psilocybin mushrooms across this country. This is the oldest sacrament, period. Cave paintings, the oldest cave paintings depict psilocybin mushrooms. Go look at the mushroomstone.com. Friend of mine, Carl DeBorgi, art historian, he has been searching through sacred art around the world for decades, and he has identified sacred mushrooms in almost every single religious group. I'm not on Twitter. you're welcome to hop in on this conversation. Like I said, thanks, Tristan. Anyway, let's move on though, Sasha. If you're not able to hop in here, Tristan's got a link there. Okay, great. Have a great meeting. Please, people, please go sign, contribute to the public comment. Let the OHA know that religious use of psilocybin should be protected under law, and that it should be open to, people who don't necessarily have the money to open a $250,000 treatment center. So anyway, Greg, the question that I wanted to come back to is, again, this notion of guides. And I'm asking this kind of selfishly because this is a tricky spot for me that has become hard for me to turn away from. I've had more and more experiences where there definitely seem to be intelligences that are communicating with me, but it's been one of the hardest walls for me to bring down. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts around kind of how to accept that a little easier, how to have some kind of a framework to understand that better.
To understand what the flow?
No, guides, these like intelligences communicating with this. This is something that for me has been so far out of the realm of reality, and I'm coming to accept it more. And maybe it's just, the same thing as just letting go and accepting that it is what it is. But, I guess that's what I'm really curious about, is when you were able and how you were able to accept that you had these quote guides.
Okay. Well, they've always been with me long before the mushroom space. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that's one thing that's been going on. But maybe a different way to look at it is in the book Beyond America, or Before America, by Graham Hancock. In it, he's talking about the Amazonian peoples and how they have, like, there are certain planting techniques and styles, and there are certain ways of cultivating soils, okay, that are above ground, so that they have soils that can, and all these different things that are obviously advanced technologies. Okay, you don't just like come up with them. And he starts, he's questioning them about these things, and he's talking to them about, like ayahuasca. Like, how did you come up with ayahuasca? Like, what is the whole point behind that? Like, out of the 250 different types of vines, how did you pick this one? Okay, that matches with this bark. Okay, to create and they're like, well, those were our guides. And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, well, these people came here and taught these to us. Okay. And what they did is they gave ayahuasca to us so that should we need to contact them again after they left, this was a way to get in touch with them. Okay. And when you look at that and you're like, wait a second. So these altered states of consciousness are a way to contact something that wants to give us superior knowledge, that wants to give us something that we don't have access to playing tic-tac-toe. I think that's a huge aspect to it, because when we look at the aspect of the ego, and in the ego we talk about right and wrong. Right and wrong is an aspect of ego. Okay, good and bad aspect of ego. Truth versus falseness, that's a different story. You can look and you see that there are two apples sitting on my counter. That's the truth. Okay. So when we look at the whole aspect of ego needing to be right, okay, versus the whole concept of there's something out there, okay, that we can get access to, that wants to share knowledge. Remember I said when I was young, I had access to an immense amount of knowledge when I was a teenager, coming through this, the spiritual realm, that at one point in time I said, stop. I don't want access to this anymore. I was finding information that was scaring me. all truth and accurate, but I'm like, how do I know this? Okay. Because I wanted proof that that what I was coming to was reality. And then I started asking questions. Okay, so prove it to me. What is this? And all of a sudden I'm finding things and I'm like, I don't know that I really, it freaked me out. And I said, I want to turn this off. Okay. So how do we address people who are in that space of, we'll call it the ego space, that, I am in resistance and so on. And I think it really comes down to the question of, being, openness. It's like the interviews for Sanctuary with Athena. Okay. Athena's not there. She's not looking for your black and white answers. Okay. She's sensing the essence of who you are and your beingness. Okay. And I think that when guiding and being with people, it's sensing not a desperateness, but an openness. Are you open to being guided? Okay. Versus are you, do you want to know and master this? Okay. Because what's available and what's out there there's so much more than playing tic-tac-toe. And we think that tic-tac-toe is everything. We think that if we can master science and we can master, jet aviation and going to outer space and technology and microbes, that we'll have it all. But that's simply this physical world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's the difference between playing tic-tac-toe and feeling your way through playing 3D chess. And so how do we get people to get to that place or get to that space? I wish I had a great answer for you. How do we prepare people? And I think it's really just with, the whole set aspect of integration. Where are you going with this? Okay. I was called to the mushroom space, and this is what happens through me throughout my life. I'm called to learn some hard lessons. Okay. And I get that. But when somebody's paying to come and have an experience with you, okay, I think that's one of the huge aspects that where you as part of being as part of an integration team, okay, have the ability to really help people set up for doing the right thing. Okay. So that they can be ready to receive as opposed to fight it. And it's as with anything with personal development, you can't guarantee that they're going to get it. You can't guarantee that they're going to do it. Sometimes they have to wait for that voice to be like, hey, you going to fight me the whole time? Oh, wait. Oh, that's what I've been doing. So I wish there was a perfect answer for that. But that's the only thing that I can really come up with.
It's interesting that we, we kind of have to use verbal language to try and convey information that can't make it into verbal language, So I have really been finding myself in a weird spot here lately where I feel like everything that I want to convey is all feeling. And when I try to use words, it just gets all jumbled. And yeah, I don't really know what to do with that right now. I've just been kind of being with it and accepting it for what it is, and suspecting that it will evolve and grow, and maybe there will be new language that comes or new metaphors that come to help transmit information. But it's like how do you, if you're playing tic-tac-toe and you want to introduce the 4D chessboard to somebody, and all they can see is like the tic-tac-toe board.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's nothing that I can say that's going to help you understand this. You just have to somehow hang around long enough until you get to feel it and then get closer to experiencing it.
So in some of the work I've done in personal development, we've had an opportunity to actually support people on their journeys. And I don't mean as their guide. I mean just simply supporting them on their journeys. And occasionally I come up with people who have been very much very much in resistance to what's happening. And I had one guy call me out sometime, like, if you're doing this, how come you're not this? And I just kind of went, but I am. And so when we're up with that, I think let me start off with, first of all, the people that you're wanting to work with, is it one at a time or is it a group at a time?
Both.
Okay. And I'm going to go back to kind of a concept about marketing. And that's when you're learning to sell something, don't start by selling to 500 people. Start by learning to sell to one person. Okay. And so this that I'm going to talk about right now is something that you practice with one person first before you can practice it on a larger scale. And are we talking in person, on phone call, or a Zoom type thing?
All of it. It's like, how was I explaining it the other day to somebody? Like, when someone asks me a question, I've come to understand that the answer doesn't really matter. Right? They're asking me a question, not so that I can answer them necessarily, but so that they can hear themselves ask a question and explore it further. And if, like in the trip space, people will ask, should I listen to music or should I not? And, I can provide my perspective on it, but to kind of like smile and shrug my shoulders isn't the answer that people want to hear. But if they go in and make their own decision, they do their own thing, then they're going to learn, so it's just an interesting place to be in, where people come to you and want to know of your perspective or want an answer on how to do something. And the answer is kind of like, I don't know.
So oh my gosh, there's so much that just came up for me, and some of the things that I've done that I love. One of them was a leadership program that I was doing, and the whole concept is, you go and somebody asks you a question. It's like going, I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah.
And you have that on like the front side of your shirt, and then what you do is you turn around, and on the back side of your shirt it says, you know what to do.
That's what I need. I need that shirt.
Right. Yeah. So the whole concept is that we talk about, as I was bringing up earlier, about being the guide for other people on their journey. Or probably not being the guide, but being the supporting people on their journey. Sometimes the question is the solution. So sometimes all you need to do, and like they're operating from, we'll call it like 3D, like 2D tic-tac-toe. And you're coming at it from, 4D chess. Okay. Sometimes all you need to do is look at them with love, send your energy to them. You don't even need to say anything. You want to send it in feeling, send it in feeling. Okay. You don't need to send it in words, because that gets trapped here. That gets filtered here. When you send it in energy, there's no filter on the energy. Okay. So when you send it in energy, all you got to do is send them with love. Okay. And they hear the question that they're asking, which is, what would you do? Okay. And all you got to do is love them. And with that energy, it will reflect right back to them. And they'll be like, oh, I know what to do. I know whether on this trip I need to do music or I need to go for a hike. I know And I think that there's a way to do that. And I think that, when you talk about doing it one-on-one, okay, one-on-one on either in person, which is going to be the easiest because people can really easily pick up energy there. On Zoom, people can pick it up, not as readily. And sometimes people can, it depends on the type of rapport that you have with somebody on a phone call. If you've got really good rapport with somebody on a phone call, they'll feel your energy. If you don't have rapport with somebody on a phone call, there's nothing you can do. So that would be my recommendation, though. Okay, is sometimes just if you want to send that information and feeling, send it in energy. You don't need to go down to the tic-tac-toe board.
Yeah. I think that's what I keep trying. I keep trying to step. That's such a perfect metaphor. I keep trying to step into the tic-tac-toe board, and like there's like becomes this disconnect. It's like I lose myself as I start to translate, and that shirt is incredible. I don't know. What do you think you should do? You know the answer. Yeah.
Does that help answer your question?
I mean, that was the answer that I already knew.
It's and I guess a perfect way of putting it would be like, okay, so should I go in the upper left box or the upper right box? And you're like, well, the correct answer is the feeling of mango. The feeling of the color of mango, and you're like, what is the feeling of the color of mango? Anything to do with tic-tac-toe? Like, don't you know that mango is the color of happiness? You're like, how do I play tic-tac-toe with that? You're like, well, what the whole idea you don't.
I love that. Yeah. What was it? What's the old movie that like they're looking for the secret of life, and the answer that they get is it's not like Planet of the Apes or something, but the answer to the secret of life is 46.
42. Life, the Universe, and Everything by Douglas Adams.
What was it?
Life, the Universe, and Everything by Douglas Adams.
Yeah, 42.
And they're like, 42? What does that answer even mean? They're like, we have to create a new computer to figure out the correct question that's the answer to, so we can understand it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's an interesting game we're playing here. It's like yesterday I went looking for mushrooms, and I knew before I got there where they would be. Like I didn't even, and it's that place where there's no words that is like, that's the gold mine. And we spend all of our time trying to get there with words, and they cannot build the bridge.
Correct.
And I also, going back to what you were saying, you were like, I'm trying to play tic-tac-toe. Like you're stepping out of the 4D chessboard and you're trying to step into tic-tac-toe, and you're like, you over your shoulder, you're pulling all those pieces from the 4D board into this tic-tac-toe game. And at some point, like, this satchel is going to break. You're either going to be sucked back up there, or you're going to be back here on the tic-tac-toe board. And you're like, well, crap.
And think about it. What happens if you are able to put all those pieces on the tic-tac-toe board? Okay, it looks like garbage. It looks like junk because they're out of place. It's like, what do they call it? Verbal diarrhea. Okay? You put all those 4D
Exactly.
pieces onto a tic-tac-toe board, and it's effectively the equivalent of verbal diarrhea. Just
yeah.
And we're playing tic-tac-toe, like going, what is all of this stuff? This doesn't do anything for this game because they're stuck in the 2D.
Yeah. And there's also part of this. I was talking with someone, big Easter holiday that we had, and there's even like within multiple religions, there's this part of like the Pharaoh's heart was hardened. That's why you had to have all the different plagues. But even as he came to think that he was at a place where he's like, okay, I get what you're saying, going back into the loop of, okay, well, maybe I don't have to release all these people. Then you have to have another plague. And I think that there's like some Buddhist teachings that's like, I think Eric may have mentioned it earlier at some point, that if you can't open someone's closed, like someone with closed eyes, like it's not your place to like open their eyes.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's the and to go on that, there's a wonderful saying of two guys, that this this guy goes to this mystic on the mountaintop, and he goes, what's the secret to happiness and to peace in your life? And he's like, I do not argue with idiots. The guy's like, well, I totally disagree with you. And he says, yes, you were right.
Yeah, it's just I think maybe some of those types of teachers on the mountain would be useful for me to give some attention to, because that's often I feel like I'm in a place where people are coming to me wanting me to give them an answer, and the question is the answer. It's just like, so what do you say back? How do you leave someone with a feeling of, okay, this was a useful interaction, but allow the interaction to be an opportunity for them to come to the conclusion themselves, right? And it's like that thing with Sally, right? This is a place for me that I don't know if I am too hands off, but Sally, who I love dearly, and many people do this, call sanctuary peace sanctuary, right? They'll say peace sanctuary. And for a while, when we first started, I was like, that's interesting that you're saying peace sanctuary. Do you say peace psychology too? And they're like, oh, ha, 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 ha. And, whatever. And then I kind of just like stopped commenting, because I feel like the lesson is more readily absorbed when the answer is stumbled upon.
Psilocybin, sanctuary, psychology, psychedelic.
But there's been a lot of people do this, call it peace sanctuary, which is okay, and it's kind of funny. It's kind of a little bit of a joke for me. But instead of saying to people now, oh, it's sanctuary, I just kind of don't say anything, and eventually it'll come out. Someone will point it out, but I just don't like. I don't know. I enjoy. It's not that I enjoy watching people squirm, or I enjoy people watching people figure things out on their own. And the lesson tends to be more powerful when we learn it that way, I feel like. And that's what, if I am, I have the same approach in the mushroom space. I will, like, if it's the music or something, some people will ask me, they'll ask my opinion on the music going in, and if we may have a conversation about it, and I express that generally I believe that if we're looking to explore the contents of our own mind, that bringing in the influence of someone else's creation is going to influence the content of our experience, and that's not what I'm going for.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I'll directly speak to that, but more often than not, it's becoming just this question. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think you should do? You know, and very often people will go in and they'll listen to the music and then they're like, I'm going to try it without music this time. And then they'll try it without music. They're like, holy shit, I went to so many different places. And it's like, then I feel a greater satisfaction with them discovering on their own what's right or what's best for them in a given situation rather than me telling them what I think and then them doing it because they think I'm an expert or something, So
There is, and I'm not sure the source where it came from, but there's a saying that, one of the prices you must pay for any knowledge is to discover it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if we think about that, that shirt, that's the whole truth. The truth is like, you and I have had this conversation about abundance. Okay. Mm-hmm. The truth is that everything is already around us. Mm-hmm. It's already here. We just need to tune into it. And so even if somebody sits there and says, this is what you do. Okay. And I'm, I do, some business accountability groups. And I absolutely love when we'll sit there and we'll have somebody in this business accountability group and they'll be talking away and they'll get distracted by, well, I can't do this because, and we're just like, wait a second. Have you not looked around you? Like, you need a copywriter. There's 3 copywriters in this group. It's things like that. And so the one thing that we can do is like, we could not everything that we need is surrounding us, but we have to discover it for ourselves because only then, okay, does it actually make sense to us? Because other than that, it's just like it's like trivia. Oh yes, I know this, but where do I put it in my actual life? Whereas if we discover it means we're actually searching for where, like, I've got this and I need to put something there. In discovery means we're searching.
I learned algebra for however long they taught me algebra, and it didn't fucking matter until eventually I came into a situation where I needed to learn some algebra. And then I actually learned and applied algebra. Abraham Hicks, I've been listening to a lot and really, really love those teachings, says, words don't teach. Experience teaches. Words do not teach. I'm thinking back of Tristan. What was it that you did recently? You did some kind of a graphic image. You spent like, I don't know, all night long making this thing. And I'm just like, he's like sending me drafts and I'm like, okay, that's cool. And I'm just like, in my head, I'm thinking like, why is he doing this? Like, I don't
I'm sending them to me.
And then, like, I guess it was like the next day or 2 days later, he's like, yeah, I spent all this time. And like, we don't even need this, do we? You're like, we're not even going to use this. It's like, no. Like, and I could have told him, I could have been like, but there's something so valuable in Tristan spending 6 or 8 hours doing this thing that didn't need to be done so that maybe he'll learn, oh, well, maybe I just don't have to do that next time. Maybe I can just like ask what needs to be done instead of just doing it. But I really appreciate, Tristan, that you just do. You just jump in there and you do things. I love that you don't know what you're doing, but you fucking try. And even if you get it wrong, like, you have really been so impressive in that regard that you just fucking give it your best. We're all just figuring it out. So, thank you all both. Thank you both for being on this. Thanks, Kevin, for hopping in. Thanks, everybody. Digital DMT. Sorry I didn't get to your comments there. I love this idea of a psychedelic USB filled with data and schematics. Yes, download, baby. Greg, thanks as always. Love conversations with you. You have such good insights. Hope you are healing rapidly, and look forward to more to come.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Tristan, thanks as always, my friend. All right, everybody. Another on Psilocybin down. Till next time. Holla.